Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our quarterly meeting of the Regarding Technology Advisory Committee. Welcome. We are going to jump right into business, and I have some opening housekeeping. It's just a refresh on the Open Meetings Act protocol for virtual meetings. I want you to know, of course, that this is being live streamed on YouTube, and all members are to be visible at all times in order for us to maintain quorum. You should be able to be seen clearly, so check your lighting. If you're not, you need to be able to see facial expressions. And members should only be off camera during our official breaks and or our subcommittee work. And if you would, please, if you haven't already, change your Zoom name at the bottom for your profile to your name and your institutional affiliation. And it can be an acronym, of course, if it is long. Any questions about the Open Meetings Act protocol? All right, hearing none, we're going to proceed with the consideration and possible. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that is not on here, but that's what we need to do. We want to do a roll call just so everybody has a chance to check their mic. We have kind of looked to see who is here for the sake of quorum, but we would like to go through the roll call. And I will turn that over to Dr. Walters.
Good morning, everyone. When I call your name, if you would respond so I can hear your voice on the audio team. Patrick is here. Darlene Stubblefield is hopefully on the way. Luke Dowden. Linus Gaines.
Here.
Thank you, Liz. Mary Gentry.
Here.
Thank you, Mary. Robert Green. Janet Camps.
I'm here.
Good morning. Sarah Lee.
Here.
Thank you, Sarah. Alicia Lloyd.
Here.
Thank you, Alicia. Timothy Snyder.
Here.
Thank you, Timothy. Lydia Tennant. Nikki Whiteside.
Here.
Thank you, Nikki. Ruth Chisholm.
I'm here.
Thank you, Ruth. Julie DeLillo. Jeff Reels.
Here.
Thank you, Jeff. Daryl James.
I'm here.
Thank you, Daryl. Pam Morgan.
Here.
Thank you, Pam. Young Wan.
Here.
Thank you, Young. Megan Weatherly.
Here.
Thank you, Megan. Jacqueline Mott.
Present.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Aaron McGough.
Here.
Thank you, Aaron. Alexandria Herrick.
Here.
Thank you, Alexandra. And Bella Rodriguez. We have forum, and thank you very much. Good to see everyone. And it's back to you. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Now we'll move forward with consideration and possible action to approve the summary notes for our last meeting, which was January 13th, 2023. So hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and I would accept that motion to approve them.
I move to approve. This is Jacqueline.
And Morgan second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any edits, corrections to those summary notes? Any discussion of them? All right, hearing none, I will call for a vote. To vote, we will either raise your hand physically, you can all see you clearly here, so that's fine, or you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom if you prefer. So with that, all in favor, please raise your hand or your virtual hand and keep it up while the votes are counted. Okay. Thank you very much. I believe we said it was unanimous, but just make sure, were there any against? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion to approve the summary notes from the last meeting is carries, and we will move forward with our next item, which we have gifts from Charleston State University. So one of the roles currently of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee is to review and make recommendations on doctoral proposals for online programs or recommendations for proposals for online doctoral programs or distance education programs. And we have one today from Charleston State University. This is an existing Doctor of Education EDU degree with a program in educational leadership. And based on the LTAC assessment of the application compliant with agency distance education rules and policy, we will discuss the proposal. And we have a subcommittee that reviews these and brings forward recommendation and consideration. And Dr. Jacqueline Monk is the chair of that subcommittee. And Dr. Monk, if you would be so kind as to introduce our guests from Charleston State University and lead us through the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Patrick, for the handoff. Today, we are considering a proposal for the EDD in educational leadership, a distance education doctoral proposal from Charleston State University. This is an existing program that is a hybrid program, and the proposal before LTAC is to create a parallel section of this existing EDD program to enable it to have an online section of the degree program as well. Our guests from Charleston State University include Dr. Julie Howell, Dr. Melissa Becker, and Ms. Violet Newell. And I see that Dr. Howell and Dr. Becker are both here. I'm not sure whether Ms. Newell is on the line, but let me turn to Dr. Howell, who is department head and professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Technology, to welcome her colleagues and to present a very brief overview of the proposal, and then we can take questions from the group. Dr. Howell?
Hi there, good morning. Yes, and I saw that Miss Newell is here. She's on the Zoom as well, and as well as Dr. Becker.
Dr. Howell, if I could interrupt, please. Do you mind turning on your camera?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. We are at another conference today, and so I'm in my car because there's a few groups in the conference center, so I wanted to make sure that we could hear and be able to discuss. Can you hear and see me now?
We can see you now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yes, the program, the section that is on the agenda, we have offered for 20 years now, the doctoral program, and they meet face-to-face modality every other week. The opposite weeks, there are online supplemental materials. And what's on the agenda is to offer an online section that will meet via synchronous Zoom, so they can meet from anywhere. That's why it's we're calling it an online section, but they will meet synchronously for every other week when our other students are in class face to face. And then they'll also have the opposite weeks, they'll have online supplemental materials because they're enrolled in 2 classes per semester, meeting every week, but each class meets the opposite week. So students are in class, every Wednesday night.
Dr. Becker, did you have additional comments that you wanted to make?
No, but thank you.
So to clarify, the request, Dr. Becker and Dr. Howell, you're listing it as 100% online. So to clarify, then students who are enrolled in this particular section of your doctoral program will not need to come physically to a campus. They can complete the entirety of their program online. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Great. I wanted to open the floor to any comments from my subcommittee colleagues. So if anyone has any comments or questions? Any questions or comments from the full LTAC? None. Then Patrick, let me turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you very much. If there's no other discussion, then we will move forward with the next agenda item, which is consideration and possible action to recommend for approval of the distance education delivery of Tarleton State University's existing doctorate of education degree with a program in educational leadership based on the LTAC's assessment of the application's compliance of the THECB distance education rules and policy. And because this is a recommendation that is coming from a subcommittee, we do not need a motion, but we do need a second.
And I should say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mention this, but the subcommittee does recommend approval. So that's actually the motion that's coming before the LTAC.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Mott. Is there a second?
This is Jeff Reels. I second the motion.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So with that, we will call a vote, and we'll do it the same way we did before. All in favor of recommending this doctoral degree for approval, please sign by raising your hand or your virtual hand in Zoom, and please keep it up while we count. Okay, it appears to be unanimous, but we'll check just to make sure. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, seeing none, the motion carries. I would like to congratulate our colleagues at Tarleton State University. This will now move to the next step of approval. This is just a recommendation stage. And Dr. Lofters, I believe since it's an existing program, it will go to Assistant Commissioner to approve. It does not have to go before the full ordering board.
Correct. Move to the Assistant Commissioners and Assistant Executive Program and be reviewed by them for approval. Correct.
Well, congratulations. We wish you the best of luck with this new delivery of your doctoral degree. And that you're, of course, welcome to stay on for the rest of our multi-hour meeting, but we understand that you are at a conference and probably have better options today. So, yeah, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you all.
We're going to move forward with the next portion of the agenda, which is THECB updates. And Kyla's going to lead us through those. We are expecting Dr. Troutman at some point, probably around 10 o'clock during these updates. So whatever point we're at when he is able to present to us, we will reshuffle the agenda to accommodate his ability to be with us. That may also be the case of John Wyatt regarding the legislative update. So now I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I am going to sort of move the updates around a little bit, be a little bit flexible with the order because of just when people might arrive to talk about the various points. Apparently when we start the meeting an hour earlier, y'all don't talk as much, so that's okay. We'll have our coffee while I talk a lot about some things related to the Texas administrative code changes and the DOE request for information that was recently come out and some digital learning updates. And then as other HEB staff come on, we'll have them do the updates. So I'm going to start with agenda item 5B, which is Texas Administrative Code rules regarding distance education updates. These are, of course, the Texas Administrative Code rules that you all as LTAC helped to draft scope and ideas and language and all of that for. They were posted in the Texas Register, I believe in the January 27th edition. And they will be going to the Committee for Academic Workforce and Success on April 26th. And then to board on April 27th. And those meetings are, of course, always live streamed from the coordinating board website if you care to watch the proceedings. Just to go over, we have some new members and things, so I'm just going to go over sort of a brief review of what those rules are, and then some updates on that. So the rules that are going to board are all in Texas Administrative Code, Title 19, Part 1. Chapter 1, Subchapter O, Rules 1.188 and 1.190. These are concerning the charge of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. So we are both extending the abolishment date of the committee until April 27th of 2028. That is generally the abolishment date gets updated about, I believe it's every 4 years. I think, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think so we decided that while we were revising the rules, we may as well update the abolishment date of the committee. So now to April 27th, 2028. And also to bring the charge of LTAC into line with the proposed new rules in subchapter J, sections 2.200 to 2.207. I'll go over in just a minute. So those are just a couple of changes, but the new charge includes the addition of reviewing institutional plans for distance education. The second set of rules that's going to the board is Chapter 2, Subchapter A. There's Rule 2.3 and 2.9 are put together. 2.3 is concerning definitions necessary for establishing a revised approval process for associate degrees, and 2.9 is concerning modifications and revisions of the degree program, particularly as involves the modality of delivery. And so this states that institutions will notify the coordinating board of intent to offer a program through the distance education modality. And that's just to put that in line with, again, the proposed changes in Chapter 2, Subchapter J, which are the big set of new rules concerning distance education. And that's the third item that will go before the board, or the third set of rules. So this Chapter 2, Subchapter J is a new subchapter, or is proposed as a new subchapter. Rules 2.200 to 2.207 are concerning the approval of distance education for public institutions. And these are, of course, what we have talked about at length in the past year or so, amending the definitions of distance education courses and programs, and revising the approval process for public institutions seeking to offer distance education, which includes an institutional plan for distance education rather than reviewing sort of the program level. And then the last set of rules that would be going to the board are in Chapter 13, Subchapter O. And these are the rules that concern formula funding for distance education. There are no substantive changes to these rules. They are now in Chapter 4, Subchapter E, and we're as the coordinating board is just moving and sort of reorganizing the formula funding rules so that they can all be found in one place in Chapter 13. So there are no changes in the language of those rules aside from removing something that was duplicated, but they are just sort of being reordered within the TAC. So the timeline for this is that, assuming the board approves of these rules on April 27th, the effective date is then 20 days after the rules were filed in the Texas Register post-board meeting. The rules about the charge of LTAC, formula funding, and program approval will go into effect then. The rules about distance education approval will go into effect December 1st of 2023. After that, according to the timeline in the rules, is when the institutional plans for distance education will start becoming due, and LTAC will start reviewing those. Once the rules are approved by the board and go into sort of the effective date 20 days after the Texas Register posting, LTAC is then charged to cease conducting doctoral proposals review. Then we would take up the institutional plan for distance education review. So I'm sure that's a reiteration of things that we talked about before, but just so that we're all aware of the timeline. The timeline for IPDs to start coming in after the December 1st deadline, it'll, sort of come rolling in. Most of the institutions have one that's approved now, and then they would be due no later than 1 year after receiving their institution's comprehensive renewal accreditation report, or no later than 10 years after their approval of the last IPTV to the coordinating board. What that all means is that potentially you all just reviewed and approved your final distance doctoral education proposal. So we would cease after those rules went into effect and then start picking up the IPTVs as they come rolling in. That was a lot of language. Any questions or comments on that before I move on to our next update? Dr. James.
Could you just talk a little bit about the planning notification requirement that you spoke about?
Not planning notification, the program modality of delivery, that one?
Yeah, but so maybe I misunderstood. I thought you said there's going to be a planning notification required for distance online notification. Did I misunderstand?
No, sir. According to the rules in the new rules in chapter 2, subchapter J, and then the rules that would be revised in chapter 2, subchapter A, it would be once the institution has an approved institutional plan for distance education, then any change of modality to on the program level would be a notification to the coordinating board.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Megan?
And Kylie, can you elaborate a little bit on the nature of the feedback that came during the open comment period?
Sure. We got there were no comments on the proposed distance education rule changes that would be the new subchapter J. There were no comments on the LTAC committee change, and I believe there were no comments on the formula funding change, although that's not a change in language, so that would be expected. I will. And well, there were no changes to the distance education notification portion of that change in rules. As for the potential comments to the 2.3, which concerns the approval process for associate's degree, I have to check on that unless Andrew knows offhand, but that the only reason that those two are sort of lumped together in one board item is because they're in the same subchapter. So we at LTAC obviously did not have feedback on the approval process for associate's degrees as a committee. We weren't involved in that piece, but and so the comments did not come to our vision. So I'd have to check quickly, but I could get that at the end of the meeting. But I guess the big piece is that all of the work that you all did on the distance education rules got no comments at all, which is unusual.
Good thing, right?
Yeah.
You just slam those. Thank you for the question, Megan. It's the same question. So that's excellent. Thank you. Other questions? I can't tell you, I'm really excited about this moving forward and in April, whether it's next month, almost there. We'll know if our work is going to be fruitful, and it feels like it will be. There's no comments coming in and everything moving forward. So I want to thank everybody who has had a role in contributing to tailoring that language so that it can move through and it can and improve, really, what we're aiming to do is make a process that makes more sense and ultimately can improve the quality of distance delivery programs. So thank you to everybody who has contributed to bringing us to this point. Well done. And Dr. Corey, we'll let you move forward with the next item of your choosing under coordinating the updates.
And I'll just reiterate, yes, thank you for all of your hard work, and we're in the home stretch before a different set of work begins, so it's exciting. Thank you. Okay, so I think that I saw Jessica Acton here on the list, so I'm going to ask if she can come on, and she's a program director in academic and health affairs. Many, if not all of you, know her well already, and she's going to talk to us first about community college baccalaureate degrees, and then about state authorization of reciprocity.
Great, thanks, Kyla. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. Happy Friday. We are almost to the weekend, which is great news for, I think, everybody. So I'm going to start with the community college baccalaureates update. Since the last time I saw you in January, we've had quite a bit of movement. 5 new programs were approved, and each of these new programs has an anticipated fall 2023 start date. So the first one that was approved was a Bachelor of Applied Technology in Cybersecurity from Alamo District, St. Philip's College, and that program will be delivered 100% online. The second one was from Weatherford College. The college was approved to offer a hybrid Bachelor of Applied Arts and Science in Early Childhood Education and Teaching. Dallas College was approved for a RN to BSN, and that's a Bachelor of Science in Nursing program, to be delivered 100% online. Collin College was approved to offer a hybrid Bachelor of Applied Science in Clinical Operations Management. And Brazosport College was approved to offer a BAT, which is a Bachelor of Applied Technology in Organizational Leadership and Innovation. That program will be delivered 100% online. There are 3 programs that are currently under review. Austin Community College has proposed an online Bachelor of Applied Science in Cybersecurity. This program has an anticipated start date of fall 2023. And then we received 2 from Alamo District. The first one was from Northwest Vista College. The college submitted a proposal for an online Bachelor of Applied Technology in Cloud Computing. If approved, this program would start enrolling students in spring of 24. The second one from Alamo was from Palo Alto College. That college has proposed a hybrid Bachelor of Applied Technology in Organizational Leadership. That program also has an anticipated start date of spring 2024. So that concludes my update on community college baccalaureates. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Jessica, on your first list, the BAT, you said innovation and leadership, maybe from Brazosport. Can you say that one more time?
Yes, so Brazosport College, it's a Bachelor of Applied Technology, Organizational Leadership and Innovation. And that one has a fall 23 start date and will be 100% online.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, no more questions? All right, I'm going to move on to Sarah. Super short update. I only have 2 items for you. The first one is just a reminder for those of you who work with Sarah at your institutions. The annual data reporting is coming up. As in years past, the reporting period runs May 15th through June 15th. NC Sarah has posted 2023 reporting guidelines. There's also a recording of a webinar that happened earlier this month. So plenty of resources available on the NC Sarah website if you happen to be new to Sarah data reporting, or you just need a refresher, which is an annual thing. So I imagine most of us do need a refresher. I know I do. The second item, and this is kind of bittersweet for me, but the coordinating board is in process of transferring Sarah duties to a new division. So Kathy Mayer, she's the director of private post-secondary institutions at the coordinating board, will be the new Sarah lead for Texas beginning later this spring. Kathy and her team work with state authorization of institutions that operate in Texas. So if we have an out-of-state institution that does not participate in SARA or has established a physical presence within the state of Texas, they go to CAM's team to make sure they are properly authorized to conduct those activities within our state. So moving SARA to Kathy puts all state authorization under one team. It just makes great sense. So be on the lookout for more communications about that transition. And that is it for Sarah. Very short. Any questions?
Jessica, can you spell Kathy's last name?
Yes, let me pull it up because I always misspell it. It is Mayeaert.
Is it Kathy with the C or K?
A C.
Yes.
And Dr. Mock, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Jessica, are we going to go through, is this transition before or after the renewal process? You know, are you going to still manage that one and sign off, or it's not yet determined?
You mean the institutional renewals? Yeah, so I will be handing that over to Kathy and her team sometime this spring, but for now, until we let you know otherwise, please just keep sending those to me and I'll make sure they get processed.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, well, thank you all again for having me. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Jessica, I'd like to say on behalf of the group that we definitely appreciate your support, the headaches that went with all the things related to Sarah. We really, really appreciate your support and we will miss you all.
Well, thank you so much. That's so kind. I appreciate it.
Best wishes.
Well, thank you, Jessica. First, we always love having a meeting, but we understand that we have many things on your plate, so thank you for coming. I don't think that I greeted Charlene when she got in, so everybody is here in person. Here we are all together. Okay, so moving right along. I'm going to next talk about agenda item 5F with the Department of Education request for information. This is a very sort of vague listing on there, so you're probably wondering what that is all about. So on February 15th, the U.S. Department of Education published a Dear Colleague letter, a letter updated about February 28th, entitled Requirements and Responsibilities for Third-Party Servicers and Institutions. This letter updated guidance to institutions that contract with third-party servicers to administer any aspect of the institution's participation in student assistance programs authorized under Title IV. The guidance, as far as reporting and audit requirements that are outlined, would go into effect September 1st. This has been, well, it's a little bit of a moving target, so I'm going to explain that a little bit more as I go on. But the guidance seems to expand the definition of TPS from entities with direct involvement with federal aid funds to entities involved in things like student recruiting and retention, provision of software products and services involving Title IV administration, and provision of educational content and instruction. So it's quite a big field of things that would cover in terms of services and resources provided and software and things like that. So there was a comment period on the Dear Colleague letter. The coordinating board did submit a comment, which is available publicly through the federal, I think it's regulations.gov is the website, but I can also send that out after if you'd like to read it. And the comment letter is long. I'm not going to sort of go through all of the points, but the coordinating board did urge the Department of Education to pursue negotiated rulemaking instead to modify the TPS definition. In fact, on March 24th, the federal DOE did issue an intent to establish negotiated rulemaking on a variety of topics. There are public hearings scheduled for April 11th through 13th. So just here, you know, April is basically, well, it's tomorrow, so it's coming. And there's a written public comment deadline for that, April 24th. There are a number of issues under consideration for that negotiated rulemaking committee, but the ones that may be of particular interest to LTAC are that the third-party servicers and related issues is on that list. Things such as reporting, financial responsibility, compliance, and past performance requirements as a component of institutional eligibility for participation in Title IV. The definition of distance education as it pertains to clock hour programs and reporting for students who enroll primarily online is on that list. Recognition of accrediting agencies is on that list, and institutional eligibility, including state authorization as a component of that eligibility is on that list. All of what I've just said is public information available through the DOE website, and I can also send out links directly to your policy letter and the negotiated rulemaking and things like that, just so you all can get your hands on that quickly. As far as the coordinating board, as I said, we did submit a comment for the regulations for the Dear Colleague letter that came out in February. We're in, I mean, as you can see, this is, as I said, a moving target. There are lots of things happening and lots of discussions that we're having, and so we're having an internal discussion about how to best be an informational resource for the institutions. Our recommendation, or my recommendation at this point, is to confer with your institutional legal counsel about how these things might affect the institution. There were listening sessions on the Dear Colleague letter, which I believe the recordings are available, and I can find those links and send them to you. But there are lots of different sort of ways that institutions could be affected by this, and it may also sort of differ institution to institution. So it's important to talk to legal counsel at your institution in order to figure out how that specifically might affect you all. I don't know how many questions I can answer given the state of things as they are right now, but I'm happy to try to provide any information I can. If you have any questions, or if you want to comment.
Dr. Ma?
Kyla, did the coordinating board itself offer any comment? And if so, can you share what the gist of the comments were?
We did. It was submitted yesterday. Like I said, it's quite long, so I can summarize a bit, but the coordinating board called for pursuing negotiated rulemaking to modify the TPS definition. And that is really the biggest sort of ask of this letter, but it's quite long and detailed as to the ways in which the agency and the institutions in Texas may be affected by this. So all of the comments are available publicly, so I can send out the comments to you all, so you can read it in your spare time.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Thank you. And I would note yesterday, I also made a submission on behalf of our president, and there were over 600 public comments so far at that point. And of course, with the deadline yesterday, I imagine there were more that came in by end of day, which they keep it open until midnight, they accept public comment and regulations talked about. There was also the earlier public comment on the OPM and bundled services and related to the prohibition of revenue share. And that one closed March 16th, 15th or 16th. So all of those comments are also publicly available at regulations.gov associated with that document. Maybe that just perhaps some of you were involved in working with your leadership to submit comments as well. Any comments or questions on this topic? Oh,
Well, just to assure you all that it's on our radar and we are talking about it at length internally, so so we will keep you apprised of any information that goes out to the institutions and things like that. Okay, I believe that John Wyatt has arrived, so that would be agenda item 5A, our legislative session update. And John, if you are there and available, we are ready for you.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning. My name is John Wyatt. I'm Senior Director of External Relations at the Coordinating Board. So we are well underway in the legislative session. So just to give you a little kind of sense of timelines, this is the point in time at which legislators are really pushing to get their bills heard in committee. So the House Higher Education Committee, the Senate Subcommittee on Higher Education are well underway. The House Committee has been meeting typically on Mondays. The Senate Committee usually on Thursdays. And there have been several bills that have been heard in committee and are now moving through the process. So in terms of legislative timelines, April is kind of do or die for bills to at least get their initial hearing in committee. Because what you start to see in May is a series of deadlines beginning usually in the second week of May, where if bills have not proceeded beyond a certain point, they're dead. So there's a deadline for a bill to be heard in committee, a deadline for a bill to reach the floor. All of those culminating in obviously sine die at the end of May when the session ends. So April is really kind of the point where members are really trying to make sure that their bills are in a good path and are moving forward. The other obviously major focus of the legislature is the state budget. So both the House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance Committee have produced their budgets. So they have passed the Appropriations Act out of their committees. In terms of the coordinating board, we're very pleased that the legislature has provided us additional funding for state financial aid. We did request additional funding through our major financial aid programs to account for growth, to continue to serve the same percentage of eligible students as we do currently. And on both the Senate and the House committees, they agreed with that. So we're very pleased with that. We also received some funding for a couple of recently created grant programs that focused on assisting transfer students and also assisting kind of high achieving low income high school graduates. So pleased with where things are going for now. The House budget is scheduled to be heard on the floor of the House next week. So I believe Thursday is when that bill is likely to be heard on the floor of the House, and that is going to be a very long day because members will be able to offer amendments to the budget. And so they will consider those and determine if they're going to have any changes to the budget. So that's a kind of a very broad perspective on where we stand. I do understand that there might be some particular interest on the committee on HB 2177. some interest in this committee regarding HB 2177 and SB 2240. Those are companion bills that were introduced regarding establishing a digital textbook and learning materials subscription pilot program. So I can tell you the status of those bills is that both have been referred to their respective committees. The House Higher Education Committee in the House, the Senate Subcommittee on Higher Education in the Senate. Neither has yet been scheduled for a hearing. So that is the next step that either bill would need in order to advance. And I'm sure that the authors are working with the committees to try to get that scheduled now that we're knocking on April's door. So that's kind of my quick overview of where we are, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or engage in any conversation that would be helpful.
Jack?
Hi, John. So I'm curious about how the move of the Senate Committee on Higher Ed to being a subcommittee of education is affecting timelines. Can you comment a little on how that impacts things in the Senate in terms of having, because my assumption would be, as not an expert on this, is that it's got to get through the subcommittee hearing first, and then it's got to go to the full committee. Can you comment on how that's impacting the movement of bills through the Senate?
That's a very good question, and it's a big question we had going into the session about how exactly that was going to work. It's, you know, it has not been particularly burdensome. Some of the things they did, they allowed bills to be referred directly to the subcommittee, so that took out a step that could have slowed things down. And what the practice has been is bills are being heard in the subcommittee. They do not have to be heard again in the full committee. Now, they have to be voted through, so it still requires a vote in subcommittee and a vote in the full committee. But really, it's the hearing where you know, you have witnesses testify, and you know, often the legislators will have questions. You know, that's kind of the time-consuming element of any bill. So it has not been a particular slowdown. And you know, it's been interesting to see how this process has unfolded.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions I can help you out with? All right. Well, if you do have any questions afterwards, or if there's any information or you know, insight I can offer, I'm always happy to do that. If you just want to reach out through our folks, I'm always happy to help.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Okay, we got a message that the audio is a little strange in this room. Is anyone having trouble understanding what we are saying as we go on?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the microphone is like in the ceiling, so we'll try to just project, and we'll if it becomes a serious problem and you really can't understand what's going on, please let us know. And also closed captioning is available if that helps, but. I'm just checking on, okay. All right, we will move to agenda item 5G, the digital learning updates. I believe that Dr. Trotman is scheduled to join us about 10 o'clock, so I have a lot of digital learning updates. It may take until 10 o'clock now. If we should be good on timing. Okay, so quite a few things are going on in the Division of Digital Learning, which is exciting. We had several events during Open Education Week, which was like about the second week in March. We had a event to launch some of the open education programs that have been going on at the coordinating board. The first one is the OER Nursing Essentials Project, which I believe I've mentioned in here before. It's a partnership that we are in with OpenStax to design and develop OER textbooks for nursing based on the AACN Essentials curriculum that's relatively new. So we have an informational session on that with our partners at OpenStax. That is we're in the implementation stage, so actually writing the textbooks, creating the materials that go along with them, and so the published date, at least anticipated as of right now, will be in spring 2024, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that between now and then. But there is more about all of the things that I'm about to mention. There's more information on OER Texas, and again, I can send out links so you can find some of these things directly. We also launched the OER in Texas statewide playbook, which is a resource that we developed in partnership with the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education, or ISME, and some faculty, librarians, staff, and administrators from institutions and systems around the state. And it is a resource that is intended to support institutions as they work to build capacity and drive systems change around OER work. So it is divided into modules, so you can sort of start at the beginning of OER 101 all the way to how do I form a collaborative, how do I fund my OER work, et cetera, or you can take it in bits and pieces depending on where you are at your institution already. We're also building some professional development and on-demand resources around that. And then the last project that was sort of announced as during the first session of OE Week was the Student Success Program Inventory, which is a hub on OER Texas that organizes information about student success programs and initiatives at institutions across Texas. So it's sort of a central repository for those things. You may have seen the article on it in Inside Higher Ed this past week. If not, check that out on reading. And it will link directly to the Student Success Inventory. And that is just the preview of the things that we have going on in digital learning, but I see that Dr. Troutman just popped on, so I think we may hop over to him and we can come back and talk about it later. So we would be going through agenda item 5E, building a talent-prone Texas strategic plan, the credentials of that. And Dr. Troutman is our Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs. And he is here to talk us through that.
Great. Thank you so much. Are we ready? Jump right in. All right, perfect.
Yeah.
And thank you for being flexible with me this morning. I got pulled into conversation, a never-ending cycle. So David Troutman, the Deputy Commissioner. I'm now over academic affairs and also our data team. So we recently had a reorg, and so it's exciting to be able to sort of direct both policy practice, but also data, because I think that they're confused with one another. So today I'll be talking about credentials of value. I'm really excited about this work. I spent several years working on this effort, and so I wanted to provide you some context around that and sort of my journey that I went through when working with the commissioner to develop this framework. So I will share my screen. 1 second. Oh, can someone enable me to share?
Dr.
So
Troutman?
Dr. Troutman, the handouts have already been given to the committee, so they'll actually be following along with you to make sure that we can meet the Public Meetings Act guidelines that say we have to have everyone's visibly involved on the YouTube. So they'll follow along with their handouts. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay. So do you have that? Do you have the PowerPoint, Michelle, or I'm a little confused.
We should have some documents that were distributed to the team. If not, there'll be follow-up documentation for them.
Okay. So
Was this sent to us prior to the meeting by email? And if so, who did that come from?
it would have come from either Daniel Perez or Mary Mitchell, but I can just talk about it.
So, apologies, Dr. Troutman. Yes, if you could give us a sort of verbal walkthrough, and then we can send out any sort of follow-up documentation to the committee afterwards. Unfortunately, the Open Meetings Act is strict about what we can do.
Absolutely. That sounds good. Okay.
A quick reminder to those who are in person, Kyla in particular, can you speak up? Your voice really trails off at the end. So really need the people in the room that are gathered to use your outside voice, please, and speak through the end of the sentence because it trails off. Thank you. And sorry to interrupt, David.
No worries. I was trying to really listen to her as well. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. So I really, what I'll describe what I have in front of me, and then I would love to have sort of dialogue to see if there are any questions or thoughts. But I think really one thing we have to first tackle is understanding the rising cost of attendance and breaking that out to make sure that we effectively communicate with our stakeholders the difference between tuition and fees versus basic living expenses. When you look at the tuition and fees from 2021 to 2022, it only rose 2.3% for four-year institutions. But when you actually look at rent across the board, it rose from 5% to 30% in 1 year, depending on what region of the state you're in. Also, we have to acknowledge that groceries within 1 year has risen almost 14%. So the FDA has indicated that's the highest increase in grocery costs since 1979. So and then we don't even get into the aspect of childcare and the cost associated with childcare, because we were estimating around 1 out of every 5 students in higher education are parents. So we have to think about how students are going through and wrestling with the concepts of, do I have good childcare or do I go to college? And so we have to figure out ways to better communicate that. Once I send out the slides, you'll also see that I have a slide on housing burden. So the state demographer has released a report to understand housing burden across the board for Texas. Housing burden is if the household is paying more than 30% of their gross income to either their rent or to their mortgage. And so what we do know is that there are 22 counties in our state where a third of the residents, third of their households are paying more than 30%. It's very troubling. It's very concerning. And so students are in this dilemma. Another slide that I have is really thinking about the requirements of the workforce needs, knowing that there's an estimated 62% of all jobs that are going to require something beyond a high school diploma. But through conversations between the commissioners, we believe that estimate is underestimated. It should be around 92% of jobs within the state of Texas that are requiring some type of credential beyond. Jacqueline, do you have a question?
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. I wasn't sure whether you're taking questions.
We can have it. No, this is a conversation.
Yeah. So, as you're presenting these data and you're looking at information from the state demographer, just on housing burden alone, is that mapped from a coordinating board standpoint to where institutions of higher education are located. So can you map
We can. So
proportionate burden against location of institutions of higher ed to show where the impact is when you're just thinking generally about housing burden or anything else? Just curious.
no, absolutely. So I didn't tell my background previous to starting the coordinating board. I was the chief data officer for UT System for several years. And so my sweet spot is data. And so really what I want to do and what I'm doing currently is infusing all, not just, so higher education data is our nucleus, but I like to view sort of an onion approach where we have different layers of information. So I'm bringing in American Community Survey data. I'm bringing data from the demographer. I'm bringing anything that's going to highlight and provide you data points that will help strengthen your narrative when you're speaking to your presidents and provosts, when you're speaking to state officials and others. So yes, the short answer is yes. I will be providing some information that you can actually look at geomapping to understand what's happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're also we're working really hard to create information on the labor market information that are out there by the region, whether it be by the county, the region of the state, and overall Texas. So you have that at your fingertips. One thing in a slide that I'll share this afterwards that I really try to explain is students are in a dilemma because we do see a rising increase in the hourly wages of jobs that don't require any kind of additional credentials after high school. And the example I give is Buc-ee's. You go and you fill up your gas tank with $3.50 worth of gas, and you see a sign above the gas tank that says, you know, assistant general managers start out at $100,000. And that's with benefits and insurance and vacation as well. So we really have to wrestle with this. And I think that's why it's so important and exciting to really discuss building a talent strong Texas so that we can align our degree programs with the needs of industry and to make sure that students are seeing a benefit. So when we think about, I'll focus on particularly the credentials of value. There's other initiatives like the research development and innovation, but it's not just getting students across the finish line, it's making sure that they have the skills required and needed by the workforce so that they can thrive. And so we have to take an equity lens with this. The reason why, when you clearly look at the data from the US Census, the growth in the past decade, 95% of the growth in Texas came from communities of color. So we have to ensure that individuals, African Americans, Hispanics, and other minorities, people of color, are being supported and lifted up and provided an opportunity to receive an additional credential or education beyond the high school diploma. We have a very daunting goal that keeps me up at night, but I think we can get there. 550,000 students per year would receive a credential of value by 2030. So 550,000. Right now, we're currently standing, the latest number is around 350,000 per year. So we have a lot to make up for. And I think by working with you all, working with policymakers to make, and working with private sector so that we can create smoother pipelines that align with, the programs, but also align with time to productivity from the employer side. I think what's happening that I'm trying to do, it's almost like you become bilingual when we're talking higher education language versus talking private sector language, so that we can sort of create that bridge of communication so that we're speaking the same language. And I think there's an opportunity to do that when we start looking at credentials of value. So specifically, when we talk about credentials of value, I think that's something that is different from other states is we're taking into account the student investment. Typically, when we talk about costs, we think about net tuition and fees. But this is actually taking a longitudinal approach and following students over time to see how much students are investing in tuition and fees, room and board, and other costs of attendance, minus any kind of aid received through grants, scholarships, and waivers, so that we can truly understand how much is a student investing. And then what we do with that number is we divide it by 10, so we annualize it. That provides, they didn't, receive that degree overnight or that credential overnight, so we have to sort of smooth it out to create an opportunity for them to recoup their cost. And so we annualize it, and then we take the American Community Survey data and we understand in Texas, how much are high school graduates, high school diploma recipients making in Texas? And so right now, when you look at that information for individuals ages 22 to 40, they're making $26,000 a year. So what we did is we take that student investment, that annualized student investment, and add it to the $26,000. So we have to say that students at least have to make more than a high school diploma recipient, plus recouping their costs within 10 years. And that's been deemed as a credential of value. So what's interesting is when I talk to people, they say, well, where's the list? I need a list of credentials of value. It's more complicated than that. There is no standardized list. And the reason why there's no standardized list is because the credentials of value will vary based on the region and the state you're in. It's going to be based on the employer needs, so the work market supply and demand. It's going to vary based on the program of study you're in. And it's also going to be based on the student demographics. So by race, ethnicity, gender, and income. So a credential of value will not be universal across all institutions or within institutions. And from my perspective, this creates sort of a dynamic construct that actually gets me really excited. I know it can add confusion, but I think it also provides agility to understand how we can embed potential micro-credentials, how we can embed OER, how we can embed other types of efforts to minimize the costs that students are experiencing as they're pursuing a degree or a credential. And then at the same time, it opens this conversation with employers. So, Jeff?
So, thank you for the definition, David. It's great to see you, by the way. First of all, is that a fake background or is that your actual view?
That's my actual view.
That's pretty awesome. That's amazing. I love it. So then by this definition, then you could have, everybody likes to pick on the humanities, right? But you could, under this definition, you could have somebody with a philosophy or a history degree, but based on what their earnings are over the 10 years after they graduate, it could be interpreted then as a credential of value depending on what they earned. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So where I was going to go with this is, this wasn't just sort of quickly thought out, right? So I wanted to give you sort of my journey of where I went and where I'm currently at and how I worked with the coordinating board before I even started the coordinating board to talk about credentials of value. So I had the privilege and opportunity to work on the Post-Secondary Value Commission for the Gates Foundation for 2 years. And we really went deep and explored and tried to wrestle with defining value. If you Google, the value of a degree, you're going to find 75 different initiatives that are taking place across the country. And the Gates Foundation really wanted to rein that in to understand what are we actually talking about and how can we conceptualize it and operationalize it so that it's meaningful for several different individuals. And so we came up with a series of thresholds. And when you see the presentation, you'll see those thresholds. So I'll describe them to you. So we took and try to really think about value on a continuum. So how we defined it is we defined the first as we call it a threshold 0. And that's really the minimum economic return. That's stating, did the students recoup their costs and are out of the sort of red after a given time? And then threshold 1 is really thinking about earnings premium. And that really is trying to understand, are they reaching a certain threshold within their field of study? So using American Community Survey data, we can understand what's the median earnings for an engineer, and we can understand how long is it going to take them to get to that median across the board. So making at least 50% of what they're at that 50% rate. And then threshold 2 is looking at earnings parity. And that's really wrestling with pay inequities that take place, really understanding the differences between pay between men and women versus students of color versus white, and high income versus low income students. And then threshold 3 is thinking about economic mobility. And that's really inspired by sort of the Raj Chetty work that's happening with Opportunity Insights to really understand, is there social mobility taking place? Are they moving up the ladder and being provided the agency and mobility needed to thrive in our society? And then there's a 4 and 5, which really focus on wealth, but based on the limitations of data, those are aspirational in view. The reason why I'm telling you all this is sort of the threshold 0 is correlated or highly correlated with the credentials of value. It's sort of meeting that threshold, that minimum threshold. But really what I want to do is create a roadmap so that we have more in-depth conversations about thinking about parity and premium and social mobility. But I wanted to first start with sort of a foundation piece so that we can have great conversations with policymakers, with institutions, so that we can all be on the same page, so that eventually we can strive towards the social mobility. Because when you zoom out and you think about cost of living now, I would argue that 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, you would say that if a student receives a bachelor's degree or even a credential overall, it's going to help with mobility rates. It's going to help them thrive. I think currently, I would argue that students have to receive a credential to make a livable wage. And so that's a full stop, right? I think we have to wrestle with that to understand how we can help students thrive. And so based off my previous work with the Gates Foundation, we know that a degree is not a degree is not a degree when it comes to when you disaggregate these data by race, ethnicity, gender, and family income. So for example, I have some numbers and I have a graphic and I'll show that afterwards, but it's really showing earnings differences for individuals who receive an engineering degree from the same institution during the same year. And we follow those students to understand the earnings outcomes associated with that. And you can quickly start seeing that women who receive an engineering degree are making, and this is not rocket science, right? We've known this for decades, but now we have data to demonstrate this. Is really, so first year out, engineers who are women are making $4,000 less than white and Asian men. By year 5, it's $11,000 gap. And by year 10, it's a $16,000 gap per year in earnings. So that's why I mean by credentials of value can be dynamic in nature, because we have to figure out how we can ensure that individuals are getting paid what they should be being paid. And this is not holding the institutions accountable to this. However, it's shining a light on it so that we can have effective communication with industry and workforce so that we ensure that women and people of color and individuals from low income family or backgrounds are going to be paid fairly, right? And I think that that's just an ongoing discussion. There are things that can create action from this. So when I was leaving UT System to come over to the coordinating board, they had just built a relationship with Grow with Google. So using the data that we had produced, they identified popular majors that were not seeing a significant ROI with their degree. So specifically, they were looking at psychology and sociology majors, and they worked out an agreement with Grow with Google so that they could embed a micro-credential of data science at the same time that they're taking their coursework with psychology and sociology. So at time of graduation, not only are they following their passion with psychology and sociology, they also have additional skills that will make them marketable in the industry, that we're crossing our fingers that we'll see a premium in their earnings outcomes. So these are the types of things that we can do to maneuver to understand what's happening, to make sure that students are receiving value from their educational experiences. One thing that I'm personally wrestling with right now is trying to understand and conceptualize and map out low wage, high social value professions. When we look at the demographics, preschool and kindergarten teachers, 97% of them are women. We see elementary and middle school teachers, 80% are women. Social workers, we see 82% women, and counselors are 72% women. And we know that individuals are following their passion to make sure that they have an impact for society, but they're not being paid the same rate. So how can we create an affordable avenue or educational avenue to follow your passion, but at the same time, they can have a livable wage? And so that's something I just want to be very transparent with you. I'm wrestling with to figure out how we can make sure that we can sustain and support. And during the pandemic, we clearly, it was very evident we needed counselors, we needed social workers, we needed support systems to help us through these challenging times. So I want to make sure that credentials of value are not used in a way that, well, we're just going to decommission that program. That's not the right approach. The right approach is figuring out how we can work with policymakers and others to make it an affordable line of education so that people can pursue that and have a livable wage.
David, if I may, this reminds me of recent discussions in recent years amongst graduate programs about sort of the so-called alternative pathways towards, like, if you get a PhD, there's not enough tenure track jobs. So what is an alternative? So it seems to me, and it, like the program you mentioned with UT System with Google, when we're dealing with fields that aren't STEM, basically, for the most part, how do we adjust our degree programs in fields like social sciences, humanities, the arts, that sort of thing, to help students be more prepared for a world that has difficulty? I actually teach a class where I talk to the students about this because they're all liberal arts majors. It's like, it's easy when you graduate with a degree in engineering to tell people I'm a mechanical engineer. Everybody kind of understands that. But when you get a bachelor's degree in history, for example, you can't just, in most cases, you can't just go get a degree in history. And so how do we adjust the way that we teach these classes and deliver these programs in a way that help our students realize the value of those degrees, and so they can go into the workforce and articulate that value to employers, and also help employers better understand that just because someone has a psychology degree doesn't mean they're less employable?
Absolutely. I mean, so I have a psychology undergraduate degree, right? I didn't find my passion or my niche with data and analyses until my graduate program. But there's a lot of days that I'm using my psych degree more than my data degree, right? So I think, but I have an example also is I work with highly technical individuals, and I worked with someone over the last 11 years who has an English degree, but I call her my data whisperer because she has an acumen for data and visualization. So she can tell stories using those data in such an effective way. And how can we capture the spirit and energy of individuals like that person that have an English degree and who are effective communicators? So when you look at the Burning Glass data with job postings, one of the most frequently requested skills needed is communication. And so I steer away from using the word soft skills, and I talk about them as essential skills. Communication, teamwork, and these are things that you learn how to analytically think about and communicate in a history degree, in an English degree. So I think we embrace that, but we lean in and we provide other skills that are marketable. And then we also have to keep an eye on machine learning and AI, and figure out how we can work with machines and not fight against them. Jacqueline?
So I love this conversation, but I'm going to take a deep dive back into operations, right? And just to try to conceptualize and understand what are the implications for other aspects of coordinating board work. And specifically for my colleagues here, for the longest period of time, the coordinating board said, oh, you know what? If you have a certificate program lower than a threshold, graduate or undergraduate, so in the case of graduate programs, if you have a certificate program less than 16 graduate student credit hours, it was burned in my head, right? But I see you nodding because I know you know these data, right? Don't even bother telling us, right? So as you start to think about credentials of value and documenting and creating all of this, have you started, not you personally, but you might have, has the coordinating boards stopped to think about, are there things that within our operations that undermine our ability to also begin thinking and tracking information that promotes this larger notion?
Describe what you mean by undermining. So,
well, if you're trying to count discretely, I think the number you said was currently we have 230,000, if I took my notes right.
330,000.
330,000.
Don't miss the 100,000.
Right, but part of it is it's going to be natural growth, but part of it is there's a whole bunch that weren't counted, right? Because you, not you personally, coordinating board said there's so much variability. Don't even send us paperwork. And that's an operational question, from a coordinating board standpoint. Are there things operationally that you can anticipate that will also change? So it's a new day at the coordinating board. Commissioner Keller has a different, it's really a paradigm shift that's occurred at the coordinating board where we want to scan the environment to understand the learning taking place so that we can account for any type of credential that's adding value to a student's life. What I have a graphic and I wish I could show this, but you can see it afterwards. I have sort of a different mindset on the academic transcript, and the experience of a student. Typically we think about it very linearly, like year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, whatever. I love
the rhizomic learning approach, where it's actually organic in nature, where there's no beginning and end to learning, and how we need to think about data in a way to capture these organic experiences taking place that are having benefit and creating momentum and creating the skills for students to thrive in our society. I personally think about my, one of the first stat classes I took in graduate school opened my eyes to my opportunities and excitement. And I don't want to discourage or neglect if there is a 3-hour course that is truly transformational, that we need to lean in on that and figure out how we can measure that and demonstrate that it is bringing value. So know that we are constantly evolving at the coordinating board to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the institutions and truly using our name for what it means, coordinating, how we can coordinate and share best practices and ideas and capture data that's meaningful so that we can educate policymakers on what's happening and what we should be doing in the future. I know it's long-winded, but yes. Any other thoughts or questions? I did want to mention that as you're thinking about it, I did want to mention just sort of my professional motto that I have. I have a colleague who sent me a photo of a billboard that is in Manhattan, and it really helped me think about changing my mindset when I start the day. So the billboard reads, "Be the reason someone feels valued, seen, heard, valued, and loved." And so that's what I really want to, I start my day thinking about that statement every morning about how we can use policy, practice, and data to make sure that people are being seen, valued, and loved as they're pursuing their educational journey. We have to place in context the different challenges that students are facing and how we can make sure that they feel like they belong and they can succeed in receiving their credentials. Any other thoughts or comments? Any concerns? This is an opportunity to ask me anything.
David, I just want to say thanks for all your work in this area and your passion for it. It's really inspirational. I always learn something really interesting. I always take notes from some stat I get from you. So great stuff. Thanks for everything you've done and you're doing now and in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deb. And thanks for being such a great colleague over the years. I did want to mention that I have the opportunity that I'm on the advisory board for the ACE Social Mobility Task Force. So I would love to come back and provide you an update as we're progressing. The goal is by next year, we'll have a framework for measuring social mobility for every institution, both 2-year and 4-year across the country when it comes to social mobility. So I would love to keep you all updated on that effort. It's really exciting and fun to wrestle with this, because I feel like sometimes institutions that are not classified as R1 or high research activity, but they're doing amazing work, changing the lives of their students, are not being seen or heard. And so I think this classification system is going to be able to highlight the great work that the institutions are doing, both at the 2-year and 4-year, that are changing the lives of students and creating social mobility. So I'll keep you abreast of when that's going to be rolling out.
David, have you already shared your PowerPoint with Kyla?
We will share it out with the committee along with the rest of the resources from this meeting and also put them in the team space so that you will have access to much more information.
Perfect, perfect. I just want to follow the rules. So I apologize for not, that you didn't receive it. So that's my fault. So I apologize.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming and sharing that with
Absolutely.
us. The committee has been waiting for that. They've been talking about it for a long time. I think even before you started at the coordinating boards, they've been really excited.
Yeah, so I just so you know that I was working with Commissioner for about 1.5 years. So the Chancellor Milliken loaned me out to the coordinating board. So we worked on this for about 18 months. So it's not something that just came up. We really were wrestling with it. I also, if you have any concerns or questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I have an open door policy, so please just reach out and we'll have a conversation. I truly believe the only way we're going to succeed as a state, as an institution, as a country is if we collaborate with one another to ensure that we're meeting the needs of students. So just know that I love collaboration and communication. So just reach out.
Thank you, Dr. Troutman. And we're sorry we missed you in January. So we've been, anxiously waiting for you to return, and we look forward to your future updates and your work with social mobility and ACE. So really glad that you're in that position. And again, thank you for all the information you provided today.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, I am cognizant of the fact that we've been on for a while and y'all may need a break. I'm gonna run through the end of agenda item 5G and try to channel my theater minor from a long time ago to project a bit more. But just so I mentioned, we have recently sort of released a bunch of new materials and we're in progress on quite a few projects related to open education, which we talked about during some events during OE week in March. So the Open Educational Resources Nursing Essentials Project and the OER statewide playbook that we have just released, and the Student Success Program inventory that's available on OER Texas. As well, we have recently posted to OER Texas 2 research reports that we did in partnership with ISKME also. One is a scan of OER and high impact courses. So the analysis identified OER materials that were full courses and textbooks for 25 highly transferable, high enrollment courses that correspond to high wage, high demand fields. And it talks about sort of how we came to decide on what those 25 courses were in that report. And so the report lists all of the OER that was found, which we are going to work on, if it's not already in OER Texas, getting it into OER Texas and organizing it in such a way that it's available and easily findable. And also make some recommendations on future directions for OER creation within Texas. The second report was a OER regional needs analysis, which looks at characteristics, challenges, and needed supports of institutions in the various higher education regions in Texas that have low engagement with OER, just in general programs and policies and things like that. So it looked at which regions might need additional support, what sorts of factors would promote or hinder OER advancement in institutions. This was based on some of the data from the landscape surveys that we've done, but also some in-depth interviews with institutional administrators and faculty and things. As a note on that one, we are working on a third edition of the landscape survey, so the overall look at OER work in Texas. We're currently doing some work to redesign and tweak that survey, add some additional questions, take on things that are no longer relevant, that sort of thing. So we anticipate that being released later in the spring of 2023 of this year, so in the not too distant future. So all of the resources that I just mentioned, as well as some groups and discussion boards around those reports and the resources are available through the OE Week Hub on OER Texas. And again, I'll send that link. There will also be videos of all the events during OE Week available through that hub. So you can, if you missed it, there's still time, and all of the resources are openly licensed, so they can be used and adapted at your institutions. I also wanted to mention that the third round of the state-funded OER grant program is underway. So the request for applications for that was released in January with a due date of February 10th for applications. The review process is currently underway for the applications that were received, and we anticipate announcing those grantees as soon as possible. I'm going to say we anticipate announcing them in April. And there's more information, including the RFA and things, on the coordinating board website for that grant program. Last but certainly not least is that it's LTAC nomination time coming up soon. So there will be a nomination announcement for new LTAC members that will go out to chief academic officers and chief instructional officers. Once that goes out to the institutions, I can also inform all of you that that has happened. If you want to know whether your term is coming to an end, that information is available on the roster that's online, or you can reach out and we'll let you know. And if you want to be renominated, or you think somebody at your institution should be renominated, and that form and the information about how to do that will be coming out, I would say within the next probably couple of weeks, although I'm looking at Andrew because we have to coordinate on that next week. So keep an eye out for that, and we will let you know when we have more information. And I think that is all in terms of digital learning updates, unless you have any questions or comments before we move on. Great, well, I will turn it back over to Patrick.
All right, thank you very much for reading us through all of those updates and coordinating everybody's schedule as they came in. It's much appreciated. And we are at 10:40. We've been meeting for over an hour and a half. So I'm going to recommend that we take a 10-minute break at this point. And when we come back, we will organize our work groups and go into our work group sessions. So 10 minutes, that would be 10:50 a.m. We will reconvene. And if we could have our technical folks put the slide up that we are on a 10-minute break. Thank you. All right, we'd like to welcome everybody back. We were just discussing how to proceed with the timing here and for into our three groups, our work groups as breakout sessions. Some of you have already been populated in those. Others have been told can self-select into the group, those who weren't here last time, so didn't join a group. Let's review what each of the three groups are. I think it says assessment on your agenda for one of those work groups. That is actually the quality assurance work group. And under the quality assurance work group, we also have the PGC subcommittee, which we will ask for an update on that as part of the report out as well. The other two groups are research and operations or committee operations. You know that Luke was the chair of the operations work group and he is not here today. So we do have three members of that committee. We have Pam and Megan and you with us. So I don't recall if one of you were a co-chair, but if one of you would step forward to lead that that work group meeting and do the report out, that would be much appreciated. If you were not in a work group, of course, please self-select into the one that best fits your interest. I'm trying to think. We've got Jeff, you are chairing the research work group, correct? And Janet, the quality assurance with Robert as your co-chair. Okay, and the directions for them to go to the workout groups are, you can initiate that, not yet, but you can initiate that, and then how do individuals select into one if they're not currently in a work?
They should be able to just select, the rooms are titled. You can just select whichever room you would like to go into, or you move them into a room they have any trouble.
Okay, did everybody hear the instructions from Mary Ann, or do we need to repeat those?
Can
All
you
right,
repeat?
repeat those for us, Mary Ann.
You can select whichever room you would like to go into if you're unassigned, and if you have any trouble moving into a room, I can assist you in that.
And how much time do we want to allow? 33 minutes would be 11:30. Do we want to allow 45 minutes?
I would say, so these will be 45 minutes,
All right,
45 minutes.
so as a, let's go with the round number here, 11:45, so it'd be about 48 minutes. But we will move into the breakout groups, and those are not live streamed. And we will recommence as the full group at 11:45. Everybody can move into their group now. I have to run away. Right, welcome back, everybody. Apologies, I need to turn my speaker off after the breakout session, so we need to get feedback here. And can we make sure that we still have quorum? I believe we do, but I'm not sure we'll have the items to vote on. But
Yes, you do. Form is met.
all right, excellent. Well, we are going to go ahead and jump into our work group reports, and I think we'll do by the order they're listed here. So we'll start with our quality assessment, our quality assurance group, work group. And who is Janet? Are you giving that report?
Yes, I'll give that report, and Robert can jump in on the PGP subcommittee, or anybody else in that group can jump in if I miss something or misspeak. So we started off in our group with just an overview of where we are currently with the Principles of Good Practice subcommittee, reviewing that document. It is broken into several sections, and we have groups in looking at one section per group, and the members self-selected into those groups. Now we do have quite a few external members. Those external members are individuals who had sought LTAC membership this last go round, I believe, but there were fewer vacancies than there were applicants. So we reached out to those people with the amazing coordinating board staff. They've been helping guide us along the way and make sure we don't cross our I's and dot our T's. So thanks to all of you for helping with that, making sure things go correctly and according to necessary rules. We have three groups who have completed looking at their particular standards in the Principles of Good Practice document. And I have those updates. And then the goal had been to meet by the end of March, and we're right at that end of March, 1st of April. We do have a couple of groups who are meeting next week. And then Robert and I will get feedback from them on their part. And then we're going to, Robert and I, of course, are going to look at everything. There's a mapping document that we will be using to kind of say, okay, here it is as it currently stands. Here are the modifications that are being put forward by these by the work groups for the various sections. We do have some who are saying, okay, we finished and now you can just add us to another group. So that's wonderful. There's a lot of collaboration that's going on here, and that's a wonderful thing. Robert, you want to add anything?
No, I think you've got everything summed up well, but I do want to thank you, and I want to make sure we thank the THECB group and Dr. Singh, for their guidance and all of their help. But we're moving along, like Janet said, and thanks, Janet.
Yeah, and thanks to Carrie and Gwen. Gwen, I think you gave us Robert and I are both not with our normal computers, and so we're having to search our email for a timeline. Gwen graciously gave us a timeline. So I want to let you know that May 1st is going to be a basic outline of revisions. June 5th, they're going to be the specific changes will be ready. And then looking at July 1st for a draft of the new Principles of Good Practice document. And then August 1st, bringing that back to LTAC, and then if there are revisions that need to be made, we will make the revisions, and then they will go forward once they clear all the hurdles to go forward to the board. Do you have any questions about that particular part of our conversation in our work group?
Thank you all for your quick work on that. Appreciate it, and sounds great.
Yeah, it's a great group of folks. I really like having the so many people externally, and that Michelle, you had also suggested that we also include anyone at our institutions who do, they're in this every day. So we do have a couple of those folks who are also in there. After we talked about the principles of good practice review, then we talked about, I guess, one of the major pressing issues, and that continues to be AI and the Chat GPT 3 2502, whatever it may be, in practice, if not in formal parlance, because it changes so quickly. So I think just from our group, we don't really have, our institutions aren't really big right now on putting out a statement. I know that some have put out a statement and linked it to academic integrity. So that we didn't really talk much about that. But in terms of addressing this, it has, in the administrative offices and so all the way to faculty, even adjuncts and TAs who have to deal with these things, whatever their discipline may be. It's not just in the writing area. How we're adapting or approaching it. I want to highlight Robert. Robert, can you just give a real quick overview of your conference? And who it's
I was just telling the group earlier that we're going to have a internal conference where all of our campuses get together and we discuss, any kind of policies we would like to start addressing towards any type of AI, because it's becoming a big issue and it needs to be addressed. And I like for our institution to kind of be at the forefront of that and make sure that we are, on the same page, or that we're all addressing it in some way. So, but yeah, we're looking to have a conference, and once we get that go away, then we're looking to maybe make it a bigger conference that will have a bigger outreach. Thank you, Janet.
Other folks indicated that they are approaching it as incorporated into the actual teaching practice. So students, yes, they're curating information, but they're also doing analysis and some of the more involved activities, which could be linked for those institutions who need it, or those departments maybe that need it, could be linked to various taxonomies of preference. So there's an integration of it that's going on. And we did have a contribution from a humorous contribution from Gwen, who, if you have students who say an assignment might be okay, have Chat GPT for write a bio of you. And then that will also give some reflection on what your digital footprint is like. So for students who are who are looking to get a job, and they see that Chat GPT or whichever entity they use says, well, this person may not be very good in this because they only have 3 items in this section, listed. And it may include all kinds of things they don't want to see. So that's one way to show them that it may not be that great if you're trying to use it for an assignment for whatever purpose. And then the only, I guess a major thing may be that that the definition for credential of value may change in the medium term or going on. Because I don't, curation of information is active in some disciplines, but not in others. And those other disciplines may need to include it in a valid way. So I'm looking forward to seeing the research on this. I really do. I love reading research, and so I think there'll be some interesting research coming out fairly soon on this. But that pretty much wraps it up for me. But anyone else in the group, do you want to add anything in there?
Jenny, great report. Did have a question about the number of external members that you have on the TGP subcommittee.
The number of members we have of external members.
Yes.
We have 10, 11. well,
Fantastic.
yeah, yeah,
Fantastic.
there was a big response, an immediate big response. And it was very
Probably, right? I
enthusiastic.
mean,
Yeah, I just think the more the better in this case. And most of them are at the director level and up, but we do have some who are teaching, and that's their main role is instructor or professor, and we have a instructional designer as well. So a variety of perspectives are present, both internal to LTAC and external across the state. That's was wonderful to see.
that's great. And I'm also impressed with the speed at which you're moving. So that's fantastic. And that's a great timeline. Of course, it puts us in a position to be working with what the IPTE will look like. And assuming that these rules go into effect December 1st of 2023, we should be in a good position to help us navigate those new waters. So thank you. Great leadership to both you and Robert, and great team. So, and of course, the team that helped you put all that together at the coordinating board. So congrats. Any other questions or comments for this work group? All right, thank you very much. And Jeff, if you would go next with the report for the research work group.
Hi, all. I'll be brief. So in the research group, we talked about the coordinating board is getting ready to send out their OER landscape survey. So be on the lookout for that. And it is going out soon. Not sure exactly when, but just keep an eye on your inboxes and your folks to be looking for that. On data and research, coordinating board is contracted with a consultant to help us develop a survey that's similar to the old academic technology survey that this committee used to send out, but they're expanding the scope of it to become to hit a broader range of issues. And that is expected to go out, I think, in June, perhaps. And by the way, our subcommittee is probably going to meet in between now and then to consider the survey and to make any possible recommendations for changing it or that type of thing. And it's sort of an open call. If anybody here is interested in being involved in the effort to adjust that survey, please contact Kyla to indicate that your interest and so you can be included in our conversations. Beyond when the survey goes out, there probably will be a larger group, and there will be an invitation to folks who aren't on LTAC to come in and participate with interpreting the results of the survey and determining recommendations to the coordinating board for action moving forward. Not clear on a timeline for that fully, but again, that's going to be another opportunity to be involved. So maybe you don't have the time or capacity for in the next month or so, but you are interested in acting on the results for that larger landscape survey. Again, contact Kyla, let him know. But that's going to be, I think, pretty exciting to get a better sense of how the coordinating board can facilitate more sharing of knowledge and information across the state to improve the way we're using data, especially for digital learning. But it's going to have some overlap with things like student success. It's going to have overlap with probably a lot of the ways our degree programs function, that sort of thing. So I think that's a pretty exciting effort to really rethink how we can help each other around the state do a better job of working with data, which is a really complex area that requires a lot of resources to be able to get at. And so I think this is part of a good effort to really do something about that and share resources more broadly. Last but not least, in our prior meeting, Daryl at Texas Tech had brought up that he had worked with folks at the American or Association of Public Land Grant Universities, or the APLU, on a data maturity index. I went looking for it. It's not posted publicly online, but I was able to get it from APLU staff. It's a really great tool for doing a self-assessment of your institution's data maturity across a number of different dimensions of data. If you're interested at all, again, it's pretty much a self-assessment tool. And again, I've looked at it and been using it to a certain degree, and it's really great. If you're interested at all, you can email me and I will be happy to send that to you in a document or in an email. So let me know, email me. And that's about it. The big thing though is the working on the big survey, and then again, over in between now and June when the survey goes out, and then after on the analysis and recommendations that will result from the survey. If anybody else from our committee or from the board staff want to chime in and add to anything I've said. Superb. Okay. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And our third work group committee is our operations work group. And who ended up chairing that? Was that you, Pam?
So I'm going to take this one, Patrick. As always, it's hard to encapsulate 45 minutes of very spirited and robust conversation down to just a few minutes. So I'm Pam, Jacqueline, Andrew. If I miss anything, please chime in. So a lot of our conversations centered on what the appropriate scope of the IPDE should be, and discussing how that relates to the PGP and how the PGP, once it's updated, will be operationalized to move and inform the IPDE. A lot of discussion about academic program review, or how into the weeds is appropriate or not appropriate for an IPDE to get. And just an emphasis on focusing on delivery and procedures related to distance ed, and a lot of concern about potentially wading into the waters of anything that could be, in the area of academic program review. So again, a lot of questions related to scope. We really don't think we can move forward until the policy changes are approved next month by the coordinating board, or until the work on the PGP is done, because all of that is necessary to inform what the IPDE will eventually become. So with that in mind, also a lot of concerns transparently about the workload, that if the scope is not narrow, that this could throw both on institutions and onto LTAC itself. Jacqueline made a great point that the success of the doctoral program review committee has hinged on the fact that the scope of that committee, the scope of their work, is quite narrow. And we're looking at, in all likelihood, around 10 IPDEs to review each year. And if the scope is not pretty tight, we're going to work ourselves into a hole and be asking a big lift of institutions who have just completed a SACS reaccreditation or reaffirmation, and institutions who also constantly do program reaccreditation. So just a lot of concerns, but our work will be informed largely by the PGP committee. And so we'll need to stay in close touch and watch that timeline so that our work can follow right on the heels of it. So Jacqueline, Pam, Andrew, did I miss anything in particular?
Yeah, great summary.
Are there any questions from the full LTAC? So something that came out of operations last time was to move our starting time till 9 a.m. And I've heard individually that some people kind of struggled with the 9 a.m. start time. Does mean that we're going to be done before we even took a formal lunch break. So that is a bonus. But just wanted to see if there were any thoughts on keeping the 9 a.m. start time, or considering moving back to 9:30 or the original 10 a.m. Don't know what to do with the silence.
It's fine. If you have
Even
thoughts,
though-
email me too.
I was just saying, even though I was late today, I can do 9 o'clock. I apologize, Kyla. I didn't get your email was going to my spam, so I logged on. I didn't log on until 10. But yeah, 9 o'clock. If I know it's 9 o'clock, I can definitely make 9 o'clock, and I am fine with that time.
Well, the filters that put that in your spam have injured me greatly, but yeah.
You're on the approved list now.
All right, if there are no concerns about it, we'll keep it the same. Traffic was a little dicey getting here this morning at 9 a.m. in Austin. I had to stay at a hotel further away, but it will be very nice to get on the road before Friday afternoon traffic in Austin. So no complaints from me about that. So, all right. Thank all of our work group members and Megan, thank you for that report. Our next agenda item is a discussion of our future agenda items and meeting dates. We talked at a break and we were looking at possibility of our next meeting being in June. Is that correct?
June is usually the time, I'm not sure, June is our usual historical time to have the meeting. Usually have it 1 month before the cause and board meetings, which will be in July. So usually it's either late in May or in June prior to the meeting in July.
And we'll send a deal poll out around that.
We can send a Google poll out, give you some dates. I know that May, towards the beginning, a lot of it is graduation, so I don't want to get involved in that at all. I want to have it so it's convenient for you all to be able to attend. I know that's a real hectic time, closing out the semester, graduation and so forth. So usually late May, I'll give you some dates, early June. Unless anybody has any concerns about that timeline.
Okay, we're gonna do a whole hour.
All right, fantastic. And then the other part of this item is our future agenda items. We know that we have the standing items related to coordinating board updates. Those include things going on in digital learning division. I assume that we may ask for a legislative update at that point because session will have closed by the time we meet again. We will, of course, have our work group sessions and reports. And anything else that is new business that we need to add?
There will be, so far I have 2 document proposals that are on my radar for the next LTAC meeting. So those will be coming out to the distance ed document subcommittee. As soon as I confirm everything, I'll get them out to you.
So sorry, Dr. Mock, this wasn't the last one that the committee will review. We've got at least 2 more, and then we've got a meeting in the fall. And when do they go into effect?
20 days after they're posted in the Texas Register. So
That would be
we'll send out an update once after the board meeting and see what happens.
Any thoughts on what the standing is of those 2 institutions? Do they have a current IPD?
All of you have an IPD.
You're allowed to offer distance ed.
Right, each institution had to put in a institutional plan for distance ed before you get delivered distance ed for the first time. So everybody has one in. How long ago it was put in is another.
Yeah, because that's what I heard kind of saying was either it is the year after your affirmation, you have that year, or you would also have to do it if you're just older than 10 years, right? So when would that kick in?
Only if that is only the case if your accrediting body is not on the list that is in a particular piece of statute.
Yeah, that's right.
Trust me, there's going to be a lot of information coming out, sort of like transitioning the institutions into the new process and things. So the more will come, but first we gotta get over the hurdle of getting the rules passed and effective and all of that. They wouldn't actually go into effect for institutions until December.
Okay, so we'll stay tuned to see if these 2 proposals need to be reviewed or not.
Right, so it don't go into effect until December, that's why I was thinking, but I'll talk with you.
Yeah.
I'll talk, we'll
It
talk.
will just depend on what happens.
It's 20 days after they would pass, or is it?
It's 20 days after they pass and then they get posted in the Texas Register. There are a lot of like, if this, then that. So we'll, once we know for sure what's going to happen, we'll send out an update about that process for LTAC. But I think Yeah, so we'll let you know soon how that goes, and of course you can watch the board meeting if you like on the coordinating board website. But yeah, other than that, I don't know if there's any other agenda items that we want for next time. Discussions, point of update, or anything like that. Another update on something that you heard this time.
None? Okay. You heard everything? Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda and we're at adjournment, so I would be open to a motion to adjourn.
May I make a request though for next time? Is it possible to get desk mics? Because you're awfully hollow and it's hard to understand.
I was gonna say that I think it's ever an adventure with the ongoing like construction and different meeting rooms and things going on here. So if we use this room again, we will definitely get individual nights next time. Yes.
Thank you for noting that.
I move to adjourn.
All right, it doesn't need a second. All in favor? It's unanimous, none opposed. And we are adjourned. Thank you so much for your service and have a good Friday afternoon and weekend. We appreciate you.
Have a great weekend.